Okay, I'm going to start in Spanish so everybody knows. Hola a todos, bienvenidos a estas charlas en vivo de la ADF. Hoy tenemos a una gran invitada que es Ellen Kuras, gran directora de fotografía de muchos años, increíbles películas, gran inspiración para muchos de nosotros. Y muy amiga de la Argentina, muy amiga de muchos técnicos, muchos productores, de argentinos de acá y argentinos que están afuera, que la conocen mucho y han trabajado mucho con ella. Bueno, hoy vamos a estar teniendo a Marifé Caicedo, que va a estar haciendo una traducción de esta charla. Así que, bueno, Ellen, welcome. Thanks for being with us.
Hola, entiendo todos tu traducir.
Okay.
Entiendo, pero no puedo hablar. Necesito practicar.
But you have a very good Spanish. You've always been very good with Spanish with everybody. And you always wanted to have that dream of a mostly Latin crew on your films.
Always. In Los Angeles, I have to learn how to speak Spanish because everybody on my crews in Los Angeles speaks Spanish, the whole camera crew. So, you know, the AC is a Mexican-American, you know, the operator is Argentinian, you know, the second AC is also Mexican. So it's like I'm outnumbered.
Who do you work with in LA? Who's your Mexican? Hector?
Hector Rodriguez. Yeah, Hector's done many commercials. Then there's then he has a lot of camera assistants that he works with. Well, there's just so many people. I can't even name them all here.
We love Hector. We love Hector.
¿Traduzco?
Sí, por favor.
Ok. Decía que a ella le gusta el español, pero que no lo habla tanto, pero que en Los Ángeles normalmente tiene que hablar español porque generalmente le tocan equipos de cámara que son latinos, ella prefiere trabajar con latinos, mexicanos en general, argentinos también, y sobre todo en comerciales, y muchos asistentes de cámara que son latinos, así que ahí practica.
Good. So I'm going to start by saying that together with Harris Savides, you've been one of the most inspiring cinematographers I've ever worked with. And I have to start with that. I have to say it.
Debo decir que junto con Harris Savides, usted es la cinematógrafa mejor y que más me ha gustado trabajar con usted.
So I wanted to start by asking you, how did you got into cinematography, filmmaking some 30 years ago, I guess?
Le quería preguntar cómo es que ingresó en la cinematografía hace unos 30 años.
Well, I started out by being a filmmaker, and I started out making a film for my thesis project for a master's. And in doing so, somebody, you know, recommended a cinematographer for me because I was the director of this film. And I hired the cinematographer who I didn't know. And I sat down with him and I tried to explain to him what my ideas were, because I wanted to make a film that was kind of an intersection of documentary and fiction. And it was very difficult to do at the time. Go ahead.
En ese momento yo empecé como cineasta, en realidad era para un proyecto de tesis cinematográfica, para un máster que estaba haciendo, y en ese momento me recomendaron un director de fotografía porque yo estaba dirigiendo. En realidad no lo conocía yo y le quise explicar mis ideas porque tenía la idea de hacer algo que tuviera, una película que tuviera que ver entre el documental y la ficción. Go ahead.
Yeah, so you know, it's like, how do you explain, you know, how to capture the story to the cinematographer? It's really, you know, I didn't know how to do that at the time, but I realized that when we were shooting and when I saw the dailies, I was looking at the dailies and I thought, you know, they're really nicely shot. You know, there's some interesting shots, but they don't mean anything to me. They didn't say anything to me.
En ese momento que pensé, ¿cómo puedo hacer para explicarle a este señor o a esta señorita, el director de fotografía, cómo capturar la historia? No sabía cómo hacerlo. Y en ese momento me pasó que cuando vi los dailies, los rushes del día, pensé, en realidad es muy interesante, están muy bien las tomas que hace, pero no me cuentan nada, no me provocan nada. Go ahead.
So I thought, well, you know, what is that? I didn't really understand at the time what that was, but I know that I thought I'm going to pick up the camera and try to find out what it is I'm looking for.
Pero en ese momento pensé, como no entendía bien cómo hacer y cómo expresarlo, agarré la cámara y pensé, voy a buscar lo que yo quiero.
Because I had come from photography, so I knew a lot about photography, but I had never taken a film camera.
Yo sabía muchísimo de fotografía porque ya había estudiado fotografía, pero nunca había agarrado una cámara cinematográfica.
So what I started to discover is how you create meaning with the camera. So how you tell stories with the camera. So
también pensé en ese momento, es como descubrí cómo se crea significado con la cámara y cómo uno puede narrar una historia con la cámara.
So, and using movement in a way that's meaningful. So I started trying to look for meaning in the frame. Like, how do I put meaning together in the frame? And
empecé a usar el movimiento como forma de buscar un significado y tratar de ver cómo podía encontrar el significado o crear un significado en el cuadro. Go ahead.
Because a shot can be interesting and beautiful, but it may not tell the story. I mean, it doesn't say anything.
Porque una toma, un plano puede ser interesante, puede ser bello, pero no cuenta una historia, no dice algo necesariamente.
So the first day I took the camera out, of course I didn't, you know, I was experimenting, and I was filming these Laotian refugees in a place where they had been put, and it was, and you know, Laos is a very beautiful tropical country. People live in their wooden houses on stilts. You know, there's green jungle all around. It's very beautiful. And here I was in this place where these refugees were, and they were kind of like white cinder block barracks. No vegetation around, no trees. And I started filming this old lady cutting fish. And so I opened up the door and I went outside and I put the camera outside on the hill and I zoomed all the way into her in the doorway, and you couldn't see where she was. And she's chopping fish, so she could be anywhere. And then I started zooming out, and suddenly you see that she's in this white concrete building. And then I kept on zooming out, and then the kids who were wearing leather jackets and punk haircuts were sitting on the side of the hill, and I panned over to them. And that to me told the story about this old lady now completely far away from anything that she knew from before, and then these kids being, you know, a very different place from where the old country, the old tradition was. And to me, that was creating meaning with the camera. The long translation, sorry.
Okay, that's okay. Entonces,
I'll drink tea while you translate.
El primer día que saqué la cámara finalmente, empecé a experimentar y justo había un lugar con refugiados laosianos en un lugar cerca de mi casa. Y Laos es un país tropical, es un país con mucha vegetación, es un país en el medio de la jungla. Y estos laosianos en sus casas viven en unas casas maravillosas que están como sobre una especie de zancos. Y yo los veía que vivían como refugiados en unas barracas horribles, sin ninguna gracia, sin ninguna vegetación, de cemento, feas. y vi que había una viejita en la puerta de una de estas barracas cortando pescado. Entonces lo que hice fue subirme a una especie de colina que había cerca con la cámara, hice zoom sobre ella y hice el foco sobre ella para que se viera cortando pescado, y de ahí hice zoom para afuera, me alejé hasta que se veía este edificio totalmente desprovisto de vegetación y de cualquier cosa que pudiera recordarle su país y sus tradiciones. Justo al lado mío había unos chicos punks en motocicletas con chaquetas de cuero. Entonces, cuando salí de la visión de ella, mostré con la cámara a este grupo de chicos y me di cuenta que eso es lo que le daba significado a lo que la cámara podía contar, sin más que eso, sin más que ese recurso de zoom in y zoom out. Go ahead.
That's a good memory.
That was a good translation.
That was really good, Marife. Sorry. Okay. So yeah, that's basically the moment that you found really your way of telling with the camera.
Yeah,
right?
So then I started shooting, and I started shooting this film, and then I started shooting other little projects, and people would see what I would shoot, and they would ask me to shoot for them. And of course, this was all on film at this point, early on. You know, I was shooting on film, so they would see what I did on VHS. I mean, on the Steenbeck. But also at the time, you know, this was a time of 3/4-inch video.
Okay.
This was at the time of, you know, 1/2-inch video, VHS. This is way before digital. This is way before Hi8 even came around, you know. So it was mostly film, 16mm film.
Well, you're shooting on like, what was it, an SR2 or SR1, or not even a 16BL?
No, it was an SR1, and then so interestingly, there's a there's a rental company called Able Cinetech.
Yep.
I don't know if you know of it. They have it in the U.S. and in London. But Pete Able, who, this is way before he started that company, he was at the rental house of TCS. And so I would rent a camera in the very beginning, until a friend of mine was doing her thesis project, and
then,
you need to translate.
Yes.
Sorry.
Is that okay? Sorry.
I get carried away.
Blah blah blah. Right. Hablo.
Mati preguntó cómo pasó de esto a otros proyectos. Lo que ella le contesta es que ella empezó, primero hizo esa película y después otros proyectos, y la gente empezó a verla y a llamarla. En principio tenía una Steam Deck de 3/4 de pulgada, no había video, no había digital, no había Hi8, había media pulgada, 3/4 de pulgada y VHS y nada más. Mati le pregunta si era una SR2 o 1 o una VL, y ella contesta una SR1 de una compañía de alquileres de cámara que existía en los Estados Unidos y en Londres, y Pete Able, que estaba en TSS, donde se alquilaban las cámaras. Okay, can you pick up when you said about your friend
Pete
having
Able, yeah. Sí, entiendes. Entiendo. Entiendo.
Thank you.
Very good. So he would rent me the camera, and so finally I said to him, Pete, I think you should start your own company. You know, way back when. Now this is 1984. You know, so this is many years ago, and I said to him, you know, back then. And now his company is huge because
So
he
did
that. Yeah, well,
En ese momento yo le dije a Pete, en ese momento que era el 84, le dije, tendrías que empezar tu propia empresa realmente y no alquilar. Y ahora tiene una empresa gigante que se ve que Mati también conoce.
I take no credit.
Que todos lo conocen.
So what happened was that so a friend of mine was, I convinced her to go to Cambodia for her project. And no one had been in Cambodia to film since the war. So this is 1985, right? And I said, you know, you should go to Cambodia to film because no one had filmed since Pol Pot was there. And Pol Pot was still there. So I convinced her to go, and I recommended a cameraman that I assisted for sometimes as a documentary. He was a documentary guy, right? The most important documentary guy in New York. And so he was going to go, and then at the last minute, he backed out. So then I had to convince her that I wanted to go. But she said, you have no camera. So I had to try and find a camera. So ironically, the next week, I was at a party and I asked people about a camera and they said, oh yeah, talk to that guy over there. He's an equipment guy. You know, he buys and sells equipment. Okay, and so he had this camera.
Steve Marifet will say this.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so I had a friend, perdón, sorry, tenía una amiga y le quise convencer.
En español, por favor.
Tenía una amiga y la quise convencer de que fuera a filmar a Camboya, porque en el año 85 nadie había ido a filmar, ni casi nadie iba a Camboya, fue después de la guerra, y todavía estaba Pol Pot ahí en ese momento, y le recomendé un cameraman, que era un señor que hacía documentales, que era el mejor de Nueva York en eso, pero al poco tiempo él decidió que no quería ir. Entonces traté de convencerla que entonces lo podía hacer yo podía hacer la cámara, y ella me dijo, pero no tenés cámara. Y sucedió que yo estaba a la semana, de casualidad, en una fiesta, y empecé a preguntar si había una cámara, si alguien tenía una cámara para vender, y alguien me dijo, ¿por qué no vas a hablar con ese tipo que vende cámaras? Justo había alguien que vendía cámaras en la fiesta. Go ahead.
So I had to convince her. She said to me, you don't have a camera, but also she said, you've never shot a documentary before. You know, you've never shot a film before, even though I had done little projects. So I had to convince her to take me. And it was because of that project. We went to Cambodia. We shot for 3 weeks. It was a short film, 30 minutes long. And it won 25 awards internationally. I won the Student Academy Award for cinematography. She won the Student Academy Award for the film. And the jury, they established the jury award at Sundance for this film. That's how the jury award was established for this particular film. So it was, you know, fortunate for me. That's how people came to know me, was through that first film.
Ok, finalmente la pude convencer. Ella no estaba muy convencida porque yo nunca había hecho una película, nunca había filmado ninguna película directamente, así que, pero la convencí que me lleve. Y fuimos y filmamos 3 semanas, era una película corta de 30 minutos, pero esa película corta ganó 25 premios internacionales, ganamos ella y yo premios especiales estudiantiles, y de hecho se estableció el Jury Award de Sundance. Por primera vez se nos otorgó a nosotras y ahí fue que se estableció ese premio. Go ahead.
Muy bien.
Good. Good. And now, how do you see cinema from your origins back then to where you are right now? And then I want to get into your documentary world. But how do you see cinema being different then and now?
¿Qué diferencias ves en las películas, en el cine, desde los 30 años atrás a ahora? ¿Qué es lo que ves de diferente? Go ahead.
It's hugely different because now anybody can pick up a camera and go shoot. You know, before it was much more difficult to have access to a camera and to learn the skills and the craft of cinematography.
En este momento es muy diferente realmente, porque en este momento cualquiera puede filmar realmente. En aquel momento era dificilísimo tener acceso al equipo, a la cámara, y también dificilísimo poder llegar a tener la experiencia para aprender lo que significa filmar realmente.
So before everything was on film, most everything was on film. There was some video, but our tools were very limited. So when you were finishing a film, you could only do photochemical grading. So you were limited by what you could do to the entire frame or to that shot. Now, you can do so many things within the image, with the digital intermediate. There's so many more things that you can do creatively, to create, a certain look or a certain picture.
Antes todo estaba en película, había poco que estaba en video inclusive, y nuestras herramientas eran muy limitadas. En realidad, solamente se podría hacer un grading, Mati, photochemical grading.
Una corrección de osificación.
Ok, se podía hacer solamente con ese proceso, pero ahora se puede hacer muchísimo con la imagen creativamente de modo digital, te da muchas más herramientas.
Yep. So there's a big difference now because like in a film like the movie I did, Blow or Summer of Sam, those films were not digital at all. Those films, everything I did with those films had to be done in camera. So all of the looks for Blow, which, had 5 different periods. So we had the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s. So all of those looks I had to come up with on film in the camera. So with lenses, filters, film stock, lighting, everything, I had to make a choice to create the look for that film, for each period for that film. The same thing with Summer of Sam.
Hay una enorme diferencia. Por ejemplo, en Blow o en Summer of Sam, que fueron películas que no se filmaron en formato digital, todo había que hacerlo con la cámara. Y, por ejemplo, en Blow teníamos la década del 50, la década del 60, la década del 70, la década del 80, la década del 90. Todos esos looks que queríamos para cada una de esas décadas en Blow se hizo con película directamente. Entonces los cambios los podía hacer con las distintas lentes, con los filtros, con la iluminación o con el film stock.
And you work with film processing as well to create different looks for those different times?
¿Y trabajaste con procesamiento completo, se llama, Mati?
Procesado del negativo, digamos.
¿Procesado negativo completo para esas películas? Ellen dice que sí.
Sí, certamente. So, because in Summer of Sam, I wanted to give it a look of humidity because it was very hot. It was a period film in the 70s, in the summertime. So it was very hot and it was very humid. So when you have humidity, you don't have blacks, right? Everything is very hazy. It's that kind of, that humidity sticks to you. So I had to create the look for that. So what I did was I pre-flashed the film. So we pre-exposed the film before I put it through the camera. So the lab had to pre-expose the film to create a layer of haze and to create, to make the blacks not black. So I had to do that before for all the night scenes. So that was one thing I did with Summer of Sam. I used reversal film and we processed it as negative. That was another thing we did. Okay, Matt.
Okay. Okay. So, en el
compliqué, ¿eh?
En la película Summer of Sam, lo que queríamos era tener un look de humedad realmente, porque era una película de época, es en el verano del 70, un momento caluroso, húmedo, donde en realidad cuando está caluroso y húmedo, los negros no son totalmente negros, y hay como una especie de bruma, todo tiene como un look de bruma. Tuve que crear ese look de cero, tuve que pre-flashear la película antes de ponerla por la cámara y le pedí al laboratorio antes de las escenas directamente que hicieran como un procesamiento especial de esa película para poder lograrlo, especialmente para las escenas nocturnas, para que tuvieran esa cosa brumosa. Y también usé película en reverso. Ellen, did you use reversal film, you said?
Reversible, película
Yes.
reversible.
Película reversible. And why did you use that? I missed that little bit.
Because when you take reversal film, which is positive film, and you process it as if it was a negative, it gives it a certain kind of look. It enhances the colors in a certain way, and it gives a certain kind of grain. But it's a very unusual look, and so we used it a lot in Summer of Sam.
Usé la película reversible, que también se llama positiva, porque se procesa como un negativo, y eso lo que hace es destacar los colores y los granos y la granulidad de la película. Y eso es lo que le da ese look tan especial a Summer of Sam.
So now, if I want to take the look of color reversal film, I say to the DIT, I want to make the color reversal film, and he goes like this, and he pushes one button, and it makes that look on the computer. So for all of the work, yeah.
Ahora, si quiero tener ese tipo de efecto, esa película reversible, ese efecto de color, lo que hago es decirle al asistente, al DIT,
Sí, DIT.
Al DIT le digo que apriete un botón en su computadora y voilà, ya está.
Now, did you have the lab flash it for you, or you had somebody like Harris used to have those like big Mitchell Max with a little gap and put the flashlight and do it a very crafty way?
Harris was a real old style filmmaker. You
Okay.
know, Harris was really, he liked the material. You know, I also would cook film in the oven. But we had to have a controlled environment, and because we were shooting a lot of film, and so there was a lot to do. I could possibly do it all myself, and it needed to be absolutely consistent.
Consistent, yeah. Marife?
Harris, porque Mati se refirió a Harris, que se ve que usaba métodos bastante artesanales para modificar la película. Entonces ella contesta que Harris era un cineasta a la vieja usanza, que amaba el material realmente. A veces yo cocinaba la película en el horno, pero en realidad necesitaba que tuviera un ambiente totalmente controlado, porque había mucha película que hacer, y siempre tenía que haber una consistencia y una coherencia a lo largo de toda la película.
Good. And but experimenting with formats, did that kind of like took you to personal velocity and shoot it with a DV camera? Or was it something of a very small independent project that you picked whatever camera you had in hand?
No, personal velocity, when Rebecca Miller, who's the director of Personal Velocity, came to me and she said, so I want to make this film, and the only way we can make it is that there's this new group that has formed that is giving $150,000 to people like Rebecca, directors who want to make small films. And they give them $150,000, but part of it is that you have to use these digital cameras, these amateur digital cameras. And they were just literally amateur cameras, right? They were small PAL cameras. And when she came to me to tell me that, I was like, no. I was like, can't we just do 16? I'll pay for it. I didn't want to use these little cameras because I had shot Bamboozled months before with Spike. So I had already experienced what it was like to shoot with these amateur mini DV cameras. A nightmare.
Okay. Marife?
Yep.
Oh, Dios.
Okay, I'm here. ¿Cómo es que llegaste a usar una cámara digital para la película Personal Velocity de Rebecca Miller?
Perdón, era mini DV. Era
Mini DV, perdón.
DV, ni siquiera era digital.
Ok. Cuando fue el momento de Personal Velocity, Rebecca Miller me dijo que quería filmar esto con un grupo nuevo que les daban $150,000 para dirigir una película que fuera pequeña, pero con estas cámaras amateur digitales, PAL, que eran chiquitas, y yo le dije que no, le dije prefiero usar 16 y si es necesario yo lo pago, porque unos meses antes yo había hecho Bamboozled con Spike Lee y ya había usado ese formato de cámara y realmente era una pesadilla.
So the reason why it was because, I mean, we're talking mini DV, it's not even digital. So yeah. we were filming on a tape. So it's not even digital format yet, you know? So, you know, the big thing for me were that the lenses were plastic, and the lenses, if you went wide angle, the lenses look like they're out of, you know, make the image look like it's out of focus because the lenses weren't sharp enough. I mean, that's where lenses come in, you know, are important because, you know, you'd be in focus, but then you'd be in a wide angle. It looks completely out of focus because the lenses can't make it sharp enough.
La razón por la cual me resistía es porque el mini DV ni siquiera era digital, sino que era con cinta, no era un formato digital. Las lentes que se usan son plásticas y entonces cuando uno hace un plano amplio, lo que pasaba es que se iba de foco directamente. Los lentes son muy importantes y no sirve de nada tener un buen foco si cuando abrís después vas a tener un mal foco. Yes.
So when I came to Personal Velocity, I said to Rebecca, okay, because we had to shoot, that was part of the deal, to shoot with these cameras.
That was
right?
the
We had to. It was the deal. You know, you get this money, you have to shoot these cameras, right? So I was like, okay. So I decided in my mind that I wasn't going to put too many expectations on these cameras. I was going to think of them as a short story because I thought, I'm not going to make this an epic film. I'm going to think of this as a short story film so that I use the camera for what it is. I don't try to make it, I'm not going to be disappointed by the fact it's not 65 millimeter. I'm just going to say, okay, here's a piece of shit little camera. I'm going to make the best of it.
Embrace it, right?
Yeah.
Entonces, con Personal Velocity, con Rebecca yo sabía que teníamos que usar esa cámara sí o sí. Si queríamos el dinero, había que tener esa cámara que fuera mini DV. Entonces decidí que no iba a estar totalmente desilusionada por el resultado y que iba a tratar a la película como si fuera un cuento corto y no como una película épica. Y la iba a usar por lo que realmente era, una pequeña cámara mini DV y no una cámara de 65 y no me iba a sentir mal si no salía como yo hubiera esperado con otro tipo de cámara.
Right. So I put down certain rules with Rebecca. I said, we don't go super wide angle. No, nunca, you know. And I said, I have to have a monitor next to me on set all the time, a little one, so that I can focus the camera because there's no numbers on the lenses and the monitor is this big. So you cannot see the focus. Yeah, so I said, I spent the whole movie like this. I never looked in front of me. I always was looking at the monitor, following the action in the monitor. So I figured out how to do that in a way where I always had a monitor there, where I was always looking, but I was never looking through the viewfinder ever.
You're shooting for the future almost.
Oh, exactly.
Entonces puse unas reglas con Rebeca directamente. Le pedí que nunca usemos un plano amplio, ¿es, Mati?
Sí, un plano abierto.
Un plano abierto, que nunca fuera demasiado abierto, y le exigí que siempre necesitaba tener un monitor en el set, aunque fuera un monitor chiquito para poder enfocar siempre, porque el lente de la cámara no tenía números, no había forma de que se pudiera ver el foco. Entonces me pasé toda la película, en vez de mirar por la cámara, mirando al costado, mirando el monitor, para poder seguir la acción de esa manera siempre. Mati dice un poco como una predicción del futuro y ella se ríe.
And then, I didn't follow any rules. So people were saying, oh, you have to put the shutter at 1/50th because it was PAL. Okay. And I go, I don't like the way it looks. I'm going to go at 1/25th because it looks more filmic to me. And people said, oh, you're crazy. You're crazy because when you blow it up, you only have one field instead of two fields to make the interlays. And I said, I don't care, because I don't care if you have to double the amount of information. I care the way it looks here. I don't care, it doesn't matter to me because you can't see the difference. I want it to look the way I want it to look.
Yeah, you wanted what you have on the screen, and that's all you care for, right?
Yeah.
Something you want to have more afterwards.
Right, more information. I didn't need more information.
Absolutely.
Marife.
Entonces, luego no seguí las reglas que todo el mundo quería que siguiera. La gente me decía que pusiera el shutter a 1.50, Mati.
Un 50avo, correcto.
Sí, 1.50avo, porque era PAL, pero yo quería que fuera a 1.25avo, porque a mí me parecía que tenía que ser así. La gente decía, si no, cuando lo expandas realmente vas a tener poca información, vas a tener un campo en vez de dos, pero a mí no me importaba la cantidad de información que tuviera. Lo que yo necesitaba es que se viera de la forma en que yo lo podía ver en el monitor, y no me importaba otra cosa. Mati, vos dijiste algo al final que no lo pesqué.
Que le importaba la información que ella veía en el monitor.
Exacto.
Más que lo que podía eventualmente estar perdiendo, digamos, ¿no?
Exacto.
So I had to interrupt you, Mati, in all of the storytelling. I have to say that in talking to you, it makes me realize how much I miss Argentina, especially when Marife says, Mati, because some of my best times of my whole life have spent in Buenos Aires, in Urusha, where we met each other, right, in the north, in Salta, and many, 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 many times in Argentina. And I really miss everybody in Argentina. I really miss, Flora, from Lab House, everybody there. So, Argentina is a great place. Fantastic people, really great. So I miss being able to be there.
There are many people that work with you that are seeing us through Instagram. Ariel Vélez, our grip, and that big commercial. Ernesto.
Yeah.
Ariel. It's also there.
Quería decir que hablando con vos.
It's also saying hello to you, el negro.
Dice, hablando con vos, me doy cuenta de cuánto extraño Argentina. He pasado tiempos maravillosos en Buenos Aires, en Uruya, en el norte de Salta, donde te conocí, Mati. Realmente extraño Argentina, a su gente, a Flora. Es un lugar fantástico con gente fabulosa. Thank you.
Now, tell me a little bit about your Gondry times, about your Michel Gondry times. Eternal Sunshine, Be Kind Rewind, and Dave Chappelle's Block Party.
Which is
Por favor, cuéntame un poco sobre las películas de Gondry, sobre el Eterno Resplandor de una mente sin recuerdos, Big and Rewind y Block Party de Dave Chappelle.
I'll just say about Block Party, the day we did the performance, it was a hurricane.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Solo voy a decir que el día de Block Party, el día que teníamos que empezar, un huracán.
That's typical Gundry fashion, you know. We're shooting.
Let's do it. Doesn't matter.
Típico de Gondry, que diga, sigamos filmando.
Well, it was the same thing when we did the scene in the beach on the snow, because we were shooting in New York. It was one of the coldest winters I have ever known, ever. We were so frozen. You think you're freezing now? This was so frozen. I don't know what it is in Celsius, but it was 0 degrees Fahrenheit. 0 Fahrenheit. What is that in Celsius?
Minus a lot.
It's about minus 20, I think.
Minus 20 probably, yeah.
I think so. El día que estábamos filmando la escena en la playa con la nieve, realmente fue difícil porque en Nueva York era el invierno más ferozmente frío y había en ese momento 0 grados Fahrenheit. Estábamos congelados.
So we were filming from, January, February, and then March. And when we got to the end of March, normally it gets a little bit warm. So we all thought, it was a little bit warm. The sun came out. We thought, okay, next week we go to the beach. It will be warm. It will be spring. Everybody was really happy. And then, so we arrived, and that night there was a blizzard. And the next day we thought, no, we're not going to shoot. And Gundry is like, oh, we're shooting.
Estuvimos filmando todo enero, todo febrero y marzo, y a fines de marzo se empezó a poner un poquito más cálida la cosa y pensamos qué fantástico, había un poquito de sol, teníamos que ir a la playa, dijimos, bueno, genial, nos vamos a ir a la playa, estábamos todos contentísimos, y la noche antes de filmar de repente hubo una tormenta de nieve y todos pensamos, por supuesto, que no vamos a filmar, y por supuesto que Michel Gondry dijo, vamos a filmar igual.
Vamos. So, with Gundry, it was really an interesting, I would say, lesson for me, because working with Michel, someone who, he works in his mind a lot, and he's very extemporaneous, meaning he thinks of things on the spot, and he doesn't like to work in a traditional way. So I had to adapt to the way he wanted to work. I couldn't force him to, I didn't want to, but I wanted to do what he wanted to do because I knew that it would allow him to be more creative.
Gondry fue muy interesante como lección para mí como profesional porque él trabaja muchísimo adentro de su propia mente, es extemporáneo, piensa en el momento, no trabaja de una forma tradicional, y yo tuve que adaptarme, en realidad quise adaptarme porque así le permitía a él ser más creativo.
So, I was open to trying different new things, to experiment. And I was always someone who experimented a lot anyway. From like Summer of Sam, I did a lot of experimentation, and I always liked experimental film. So, when I started working with Michel, we got along really well because I was also excited to try new things. And so, we decided that we would handhold the cameras the entire time. We never ever used any marks, and there was never a tripod. We only used a crane one time when we had to do an overhead shot on Jim. That was the only time we ever put the camera on a piece of equipment.
En realidad yo quería experimentar, a mí siempre me ha gustado mucho experimentar, me encanta el cine experimental y nos llevamos muy bien con Gondry porque a mí me encanta probar cosas nuevas y realmente usamos solamente cámara en mano todo el tiempo. No usábamos marcas, no usamos trípodes, solamente usamos la grúa una sola vez en una toma que había que hacer de Jim, pero si no, la cámara nunca estuvo posicionada sobre una pieza de equipo.
You're a very physical DP, and you're usually hand-holding the camera, right? You like to do it a lot. It doesn't matter how heavy the camera is, you don't care.
No, it was all 35. Yeah.
Vos sos una directora de fotografía muy física, te gusta agarrar la cámara, no importa lo pesada que sea la cámara, vos te gusta manipularla vos misma.
Yeah, very much so, because I like to get into the feeling of it. And for me, even if it's a heavy camera, it's, you know, you can make it very stable. The more heavy it is, the more stable it is, actually, as you know. And you know, it allows me to feel the shot and to get into it in a way that it's difficult to do when you are on a big dolly. So whenever I'm shooting anything, I always put it on the small dolly because I like to move and I like to be invisible on set. I don't like to announce the whole crew, the whole camera crew, the camera in the middle of the room. It's all about ego, you know, and for me to get really good stuff, you disappear, you know, you make yourself invisible.
En realidad a mí me encanta ver cuál es la sensación de la cámara. Si es pesada, es más estable, cuanto más pesada es más estable, y permite que yo realmente pueda tener una sensación de la toma o del plano. Cuando estoy en un dolly grande me resulta difícil. Prefiero siempre tener un dolly más chico porque me permite que me mueva más, y a mí en realidad en el set prefiero ser invisible. No me gusta cuando la cámara está puesta en el centro de la escena, cuando todo tiene que ver con la cámara. Eso más que nada tiene que ver con el ego.
Yeah, so when you're making a film, is it about the camera or is it about what's going on in front of the camera? It's about the actors and what they're doing in front. But if all the attention's on the camera, then the actors cannot concentrate. They can't be in that world.
En realidad, en la película no se trata de la cámara, se trata de lo que está enfrente de la cámara, de los actores. Y si la cámara toma el centro, por decirlo de alguna manera, los actores no se pueden concentrar, no se pueden meter en ese mundo en el cual se tienen que meter.
I get it. And how about Away We Go, Sam Mendes? That it's a very intimate movie of being as close as you can to the characters and being involved in that amazing story.
Yeah.
¿Qué tal fue con Sam Mendes? Con la película Away We Go, que es una película muy íntima donde uno se tiene que meter en los personajes, donde los actores están tan prevalentes.
You know, we were on dollies, but we were on real locations. There were no sets. So it was tricky because, you know, when the whole crew crams into these tiny places, you can't take out a wall. You know, you have to find ways to block the scene and to put the camera in a place that it feels two cameras always. You know, to light for two cameras, to put two cameras in the room so you don't see each other. When you're not handheld, it's much more difficult to do that.
En realidad lo hicimos en dollies, no filmamos en set, sino que en localidades reales, en locaciones reales, y fue difícil porque es muy difícil meter todo el equipo de filmación en estos lugares tan chiquitos donde no se puede mover una pared y donde uno tiene que bloquear cada escena y tiene dos cámaras, pero una cámara no puede ver a la otra. Se genera, es bastante más difícil y además no se puede usar la cámara en mano.
So you see the difference between the two directors, very big difference, because Michel wanted everything handheld. He wanted it to be shaky. Sometimes I would be hand holding and he would shake me because it was too steady and he wanted it to make it real. He would push me.
I read that somewhere. He would push you because it was too static.
Se ve la diferencia ahí entre los dos directores. Gondry realmente quería que fuera la cámara en mano, absolutamente. Es más, quería que hubiera movimiento. A veces me empujaba inclusive para que hubiera movimiento.
But Sam Mendes, you know, he's very structured and he wants everything to be very formalized. I mean, away we go. If it was too formal, you wouldn't get the feeling of the film. So, you know, it's too rigid. So I would try to loosen it up a little bit, you know, to give it some life. But there was one scene we were doing in a car and the road was very bumpy. So I had to bring in a stabilized head for the coverage with Sam. But if it was with Michelle, absolutely not. He would have wanted the camera to go like this.
Sam Mendes es completamente diferente, es estructurado, quiere una cosa más formalizada en Away We Go. De hecho, yo tuve que tratar de mover las cosas un poco y que sean un poco más sueltas para que no fuera demasiado rígido o formal. Y había una escena en un auto, por ejemplo, que la filmamos arriba de un camino que no era regular, que tenía baches, y trajimos un aparato para estabilizar la cámara, para mantener la cámara más firme, que es algo que Sam Mendes quería, pero que si hubiera sido Gondry no lo hubiera permitido para nada y la cámara hubiera estado por todas partes.
Okay. Good translation, I have to say.
You?
Bien, Mafe, muchas gracias.
Okay.
Okay, and now how about your documentary? Lately, I've seen your IMDb and all your projects, and in the past couple of years, you've been DPing a lot of documentaries and directing a lot. And that's something that you want to dig a little bit into.
Yeah,
Con respecto a los proyectos de documental que has tenido, estuve mirando en IMDb los proyectos de los últimos años y me doy cuenta que estás haciendo dirección de fotografía y dirigiendo documentales, y me gustaría que nos cuentes un poco sobre eso.
So, you know, I shifted into directing after I finished my documentary. So I finally went back after 20 years to finish that film, the thesis film I started in the beginning that I started to shoot on. So I never finished it, and I went back to finish it, finally. And then I was nominated for an Academy Award for it. I won the Emmy for it.
That's The Betrayal.
Yeah, The Betrayal. Yeah. So that's when I started to I thought, okay, so now I can start to direct. Because people had asked me many times to direct. And I thought, I have to finish this film before I can actually do that. So that's when I finished it. I thought, okay, now I'm free. Now I can really concentrate on directing.
En realidad yo ahora empecé a dirigir porque volví después de 20 años a poder terminar la película que había hecho para mi tesis, que nunca la había podido terminar, así que fui y la terminé. Esa película que se llama The Betrayal ganó un Oscar, estuvo nominada a un Oscar y ganó un Emmy. Entonces pensé, en este momento ya estoy preparada para dirigir. Yo quería terminarlo primero, aunque la gente me insistía que yo dirigiera, ahora pensé que estaba lista para dirigir.
Right. So you know, I started to direct commercials at first, you know, just to get used to it, because it's a different thing when you're shooting versus when you're directing. It's just different. So I was directing and shooting at the same time on commercials. And then somebody asked me to shoot a pilot for a TV show, and I said no, because I didn't have time. But they wanted to ask me my ideas about it. So we went out to dinner, and, you know, I just told them all my ideas about what I thought about the TV show. And then 6 months later, they asked me to direct 2 episodes. So that's how I got started into directing TV and doing drama. It was called Falling Water. So that was the first one.
Yo empecé primero dirigiendo anuncios, porque es muy diferente lo que hace un director de fotografía de lo que hace un director. Hacía las dos cosas en estos anuncios. Y alguien me pidió que dirija un piloto de TV y le dije que no porque no tenía tiempo, pero me llevaron a cenar porque querían que yo les diera algunas ideas al respecto. Y a los 6 meses de esa cena que hicimos me pidieron que dirija 2 episodios de ese programa. Y así es como empecé en el drama, a dirigir drama, que se llama Falling Water.
Falling Water, yeah. So then after I did that, then I immediately went on to Ozark. And I directed 2 of the episodes of the first season of Ozark. And I was very thankful that I had my DP background but not only my DP background, I think what really made the difference for me to be a good director was because as a DP, I always looked for the meaning in the scenes. I always looked, how can I make this meaningful? How can I bring the meaning out of the story?
Después lo que pasó es que me llamaron para hacer Ozark, dirigí 2 episodios de la primera temporada y ahí es cuando realmente agradecí tener el trasfondo y la experiencia que tengo como director de fotografía, porque la diferencia es que yo como directora de fotografía siempre busco el significado de la historia, el significado de una escena, cómo puedo hacer para sacarle significado a lo que está pasando.
So then I started doing a lot of directing an episodic film. For me, I really started to enjoy it, and I realized that I'm pretty good at it, but I miss shooting. I would shoot every once in a while for Spike, doing commercials. And I missed shooting, and people kept on asking me to shoot their features. But, then that's when your agents get involved, and their agents are like, no, you better not go back to shooting. You're a director, you're directing now. So the way I get to shoot is I shoot my projects that I want to shoot for Marty. I shoot documentaries for Marty, and I shoot for Spike. And that's how I still get a chance to, use the camera.
Extremely picky about your directors and just like keep with that creme of the creme. We're going to have to make a small pause for Instagram to refresh the transmission. And everybody who's watching us on Instagram will come back in a few seconds. If you still have some more time for us. I don't know if you have to go somewhere.
Yeah, no, I'm cool.
Okay.
Matty.
Oh, Helen. So nos vamos de Instagram unos segundos y retomamos la transmisión. Seguimos acá nosotros esperándolos. Así que Nati ahora va a cortar y va a volver a arrancar otra sesión. So we're just not gonna make people miss a lot of what you're saying, but I'm seeing that you're doing so many special documentaries and a lot of stuff that I'm sure you really like the bands, and besides Marty, you like what you're telling, right? You like Dylan,
Oh yeah, it's like what I want to do.
Okay, sorry, you're live again.
Okay. Mati, ¿querés que traduzca lo que dijo?
¿Cómo?
¿Querés que traduzca lo último que dijo?
Sí, porfa.
Ok, entonces largo yo.
¿Largamos, Nati?
Sí, están al aire.
Vamos.
Ok. Entonces comencé a hacer películas episódicas. Me encanta, me doy cuenta que soy buena dirigiendo, pero en realidad extraño también hacer dirección de fotografía. Entonces cada tanto hago anuncios con Spike Lee, pero la gente me sigue pidiendo que vaya a ser directora de fotografía de sus películas, pero por supuesto ahí entran los agentes, los representantes que me dicen no vayas porque ahora ya sos directora. Entonces finalmente decidí que hago de directora de fotografía en documentales de gente que me interesa, como puede ser Marty Scorsese o Spike Lee, y entonces sigo con eso y hago las dos cosas.
So I do these projects because I want to do them in between all the other projects. You know, in between directing, I get to, you know, shoot American Utopia with David Byrne. You know, I get to shoot with Bob Dylan. You know, I get to shoot. You know, I get to shoot with people I want to shoot. You know, so I'm lucky because I get to do things that I love, and because, you know, they happen to be short little projects. With Marty, we've been shooting the Fran Lebowitz project again because Fran is hilarious and it's great material. It's very much about what's going on today. And so yesterday I was doing the grade in the city for that, which will be, I think, on HBO or Netflix. It'll be on Netflix. And the American Utopia will open the Toronto Film Festival.
Oh, nice. I got you.
Yo estas cosas,
Maddie,
en
Faye?
realidad, yo estas cosas las hago porque quiero y porque puedo trabajar con gente que me interesa, y lo que hago es filmar estas cosas entre proyectos de dirección. Son proyectos cortos y a veces tengo la suerte, por ejemplo, de trabajar en American Utopia con David Byrne, también con Bob Dylan. Entonces, finalmente filmo con quien quiero y hago lo que me gusta. Ahora también está el proyecto que retomamos con Scorsese de Fran Lebowitz, que es graciosísimo, y también está un proyecto que se llama Great in the City. Ellen, did you say great?
Yeah, the color correction.
Estuvo haciendo la
Entonces, lo que hice fue la corrección de color que fui a hacer a Nueva York, que es un proyecto para Netflix, y American Utopia va a abrir el Festival de Cine de Toronto.
Okay.
Questions?
Questions from the people. And now I had another question. How about, tell me a little bit about Chronicle.
Oh, yeah. Okay, Chronicle. So, well, I mean, for me, you know, well, I was in the middle of directing a series for Netflix in New York City. So I hadn't been home for 7 months because I was in Europe last year at this time in June, and in July I was in Italy and in London doing an Apple commercial. Then I went to Toronto and I directed 2 episodes of Umbrella Academy. Then I was home for 10 days, and then I went to London and Wales to do another series called Brave New World. So by the time I got home in December, you know, I hadn't been home, and I worked nonstop. And then I got home mid-December, and already I was shooting with Marty, doing Fran right up until Christmas, the day before Christmas. Then in January, I shot with Marty again. We did David Johansen, he's a singer in New York, and we did, you know, 2 weeks of doing that production. And then I went into American Utopia, and then I went into directing this other thing. So nonstop working, but really, you know, enjoying it. So here we are mid-March, and we're in the middle of directing this episode, these 2 episodes, and we shut down. And so, we shut down in New York. Yeah, March 14th. So all of a sudden, the whole city shut down. Oh, sorry, Mary Faye.
Háblame sobre Chronicle. Te quiero contar que yo estaba dirigiendo series para Netflix en Nueva York. Hacía 7 meses que no estaba directamente en el país porque me había pasado un tiempo en Europa. Primero estuve en Italia, después estuve en Francia, después estuve en Londres haciendo un anuncio para Apple, y después estuve en Toronto. Estuve 2 días en casa, después me fui a Toronto a hacer Umbrella Academy, y luego de vuelta volví a hacer en el Reino Unido, en Londres, Brave New World en diciembre. Después, cuando volví a casa, empecé a filmar con Marty de vuelta el proyecto con Fran y un proyecto de David Johansen, que es un cantante en Nueva York, en 2 semanas en enero. No paraba de trabajar, aunque me encanta, pero luego, en mediados de marzo, estaba dirigiendo estos 2 episodios de televisión y de repente tuvimos el lockdown en Nueva York.
So here we are in lockdown. Boom. I head to my house in the country. And after 2 weeks of absolute happiness to not be working, I was so happy to be in one place and to be able to sleep and read a book. I actually started to read a book and watch movies. And after 2.5 weeks, I thought, what am I doing? Because at that point in New York, it was a very bad situation. The 900 people dying a day, like in Italy. 900 people. How is that even possible, right? That many people. You just think it's impossible, right? So that was happening. And, right, Mary Faye?
Yep. Entonces, cuando empezó el tema del lockdown, me fui a mi casa de campo y a las 2 semanas estaba feliz de no estar trabajando todo el tiempo, de estar en mi casa, de poder dormir, de poder leerme un libro, de poder mirar una película, pero a las 2 semanas de eso pensé, ¿qué estoy haciendo? En ese momento las cosas estaban muy mal en Nueva York, era una situación realmente imposible, con 900 personas muertas por día en Nueva York, que es lo que también pasó en Italia, una situación realmente terrible.
So, I was feeling a lot of the weight of what was happening. And the executive producer of the production company where I'm a director for commercials, Anna Hashmi, she sent out an email to all the directors saying, well, now that you have time, why don't you make an iPhone movie of being at home?
En ese momento yo sentí el peso de la situación que estaba sucediendo y una productora ejecutiva de la empresa para la cual yo hago anuncios, avisos, que se llama Anna Hashmi, nos mandó un email a todos diciendo ¿por qué no hacen una película en un iPhone contando lo que está sucediendo?
I'm like, wait a minute, an iPhone movie. I was like, I would have to upgrade my iPhone because I still had a 6S because yeah. So I thought, oh no. So I thought, you know what? No, we could do more. I could do more. And I thought, you know what? I know a lot of people around the world. I thought what would happen if I invited all the DPs around the world to film what's happening around them? That we would have we would witness what's happening around us. And I thought, but it's not so much a documentary because I was thinking about the film Kowanasquatsi. I was thinking about films that are about, what's happening to us on Earth right now. And I was thinking about this pandemic is not just an isolated event. It's part of a greater series of events of flooding happened, the fires in Australia, the animals dying, the bees are dying, and now we're dying. And I thought, we have to capture this moment, and we can. We're filmmakers, and we can do something.
Entonces, en ese momento pensé realmente hacer una película en iPhone. Lo primero que pensé es voy a tener que modernizar mi iPhone porque tenía en ese momento un iPhone 6S, pero pensé después, yo puedo hacer más que eso, porque en realidad conozco gente en todo el mundo, conozco directores de fotografía en todo el mundo, y qué interesante sería si cada uno filma lo que está pasando a su alrededor, y de ese modo podríamos todos ser como testigos de lo que está sucediendo. No sería realmente un documental, pensé más en la película Koyaanisqatsi que en ese momento, porque quería pensar un poco en qué nos está pasando como planeta, porque esta pandemia en realidad no es un evento aislado, porque estamos viendo que hay inundaciones, hay incendios, los animales mueren, las abejas mueren y ahora nosotros nos estamos muriendo.
So I went to the president of the ASC, who's a friend of mine, and I said, "What do you think about this idea?" And he says, "I think it's a great idea." And many people around the world wanted to do something because the whole world shut down very shortly afterwards. And when I think back to it, I think in January of this year, no one would have ever believed that the world was shut down. And it did. And so for me, this Chronicle is a series of films. Anna and I put the whole project together, and we invited many directors from around the world because we decided we wanted to, find directors and cinematographers together, right? So we wanted to, because the directors have to give it a certain vision, because as cinematographers, they would just go out and shoot images, but we needed to give it some direction. So we looked for younger directors. We didn't want to go to the more established big time directors. We wanted to give people a chance to make interesting, unique stories. And so we have now 46 countries around the world who are making these films up to around 5 minutes. And then I will put them all together and curate it as a collection of films. But I want this, I'm going to put it together in such a way that we understand that it's about either we make change now happen and we look for a more sustainable way of living together, or we go back to where we were before and we will eventually go extinct. We will cause our own destruction.
Yo fui a hablar entonces con el presidente de la ASC, de la American Society of Cinematographers, que es un amigo mío, y le pregunté qué le parecía mi idea, y él me dijo que le parecía una idea fantástica. Mucha gente quiso sumarse al proyecto, porque en realidad si hubiéramos pensado en enero que todo el planeta se iba a cerrar en marzo, realmente hubiera sido inimaginable y nadie nos hubiera creído. Entonces de ahí partió el proyecto Chronicle, que es una serie de películas. Invitamos a directores y a directores de fotografía y pensamos que también necesitábamos directores, porque los directores de fotografía solo filmarían imágenes, pero los directores podrían darle una especie de relato a lo que se filmaba. También quisimos llamar a directores jóvenes para darles una chance de contar historias. Tenemos 46 países, no queríamos realmente tener directores ya establecidos ni famosos. Son 46 historias de 5 minutos. Yo me voy a ocupar de curar la colección de estas películas, porque lo que me parece que es importante de esto es que o cambiamos o tenemos después de esta situación un modo de vida más sostenible, o realmente lo que va a suceder es que nos vamos a extinguir, nos vamos a destruir.
So these are films that are much, they're films that are poetic films about philosophy, about what's happening to the people, about their mindset. So it's kind of, these are a prism that we can look back on this time and not only see empty streets, but to understand what's happening about, in people, the mind's eye of people.
En realidad son películas que son poéticas, tienen que ver con lo que piensa la gente, con la filosofía, con la mentalidad de la gente. Es como un prisma para mirar esta época y no solamente ver las calles vacías, sino ver las posibilidades que tenemos de cambio.
So I decided to call it Chronicle because it's a record of this time, but it's more than just a record. It's more than just a document.
Decidí llamarlo Crónica porque es un registro de esta época, pero es más que eso, es más que un documento, es más que un registro.
And have you seen the films so far? Have all of the countries finished shooting?
They're starting to come in,
Okay.
and and they're very different, each of them, which is very nice, and they're, one of the things that having the cinematographers is really beautifully shot, and they have a very different style. And one in particular was the film from Russia was done by a young director, and his girlfriend is the DP, and it's absolutely stunningly beautiful. It's beautifully shot, beautifully directed. They spent like 4 days in a COVID ward in Moscow, and it's a very, very intense film. Beautiful, poetic film about life and death.
En la crónica es, sí, Mati pregunta si ha visto las películas y ya entraron, y él dice, sí, he visto bastante de estas películas, son muy diferentes todas unas de otras, lo cual es fantástico, están por supuesto magníficamente filmadas, en estilos diferentes, y una que querría mencionar es una de Rusia, es un joven director y la novia es directora de fotografía, de modo que está muy bien filmado. Pasaron 4 días en una sala de COVID en Moscú y lo que filmaron realmente es como una historia muy poética y muy profunda sobre la vida y la muerte.
And when can we expect to see it finished? What do you think?
I think probably, the end of the year or the beginning of next year.
Okay.
I mean,
probablemente se termine para fin de año o para principios del año que viene. Sorry, Ellen.
No, it's fine. I'm sorry, I stepped on you. It will be interesting. We may still be in this pandemic.
We will.
Será interesante porque quizás todavía estemos en medio de la pandemia.
And for me, I'm doing the America story, and that's a really difficult story to tell.
Yo estoy haciendo la historia estadounidense, que es una historia muy difícil de contar, realmente.
There's so much stuff happening every single day. Crazy. And so I told, Anna and I briefed all of the filmmakers on Zoom. We spent 2 months on Zoom every single day. Sometimes we would have 4 calls a day, an hour and a half every day with, India, and then we would have Russia, we would have Pakistan, we were really Zooming all over the world. And, but the only country I said they have to make a political film like America is Brazil. I said to the Brazilians, you guys have to make a film that's about politics like me.
Yeah, I can see that. Absolutely.
Suceden tantas cosas todos los días acá en Estados Unidos que realmente es una locura. Y durante mucho tiempo estuvimos haciendo los briefs para los directores en Zoom, 1 hora y media por día. Ana y yo, la productora y yo, nos la pasamos haciendo eso con India, con Rusia, con Pakistán, todo por Zoom. Y realmente a las únicas personas que le dijimos tienen que hacer una película política fue al equipo de Brasil. Brasil y Estados Unidos sí o sí tienen que hacer historias políticas.
A mess, both of those countries.
And are you shooting that? Are you directing that chronicle segment that's happening in the U.S., or you went out and seek for a director?
No, it was. I was sort of directing it from the start. Anna was like, "You're directing it." I was like, "Okay, wow." It's like, more work, but different people were shooting from around the country. So there were New York cinematographers who were shooting, and then there were cinematographers in LA who were shooting the protest. Somebody was shooting the protest in Michigan. So, we tried to get some idea, and I shot a little bit, but I wish that I had been in New York a little bit more, because I wished I would have shot more. But in the beginning, it was very dangerous in the beginning. We didn't know anything. I wanted to go out and shoot 3 weeks into it, but all of my friends and my friends who are doctors, they said, don't go. We don't know enough about this to know if it's safe for you to go and even walk the streets.
Estos dos países, Brasil y Estados Unidos, son realmente un desastre. Yo en realidad no filmé todo. Lo que hicimos fue, Ana quería que yo lo filme, que lo dirija, que todo, pero elegimos gente diferente. Algunos filmaron en Nueva York, otros filmaron las protestas en Los Ángeles, en Michigan. Tratamos, yo la verdad que filmé poco, me hubiera gustado estar en Nueva York antes para poder filmar más, pero realmente era peligroso en el comienzo. Hubieron unas 3 semanas donde yo quería ir e incluso mis amigos médicos me dijeron no vayas porque no sabemos suficiente sobre esa enfermedad todavía y no sabemos qué puede pasar.
And you even had the Black Lives Matters at the same time, right? So it was just like two big things happening at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. Two big things happening at the same time. And now we have, the militarization of the U.S., in Portland, Oregon, where, it's ridiculous. The administration, I could go on. Don't even get me started.
También tuvimos el evento de Black Lives Matter también, o sea que son dos asuntos grandes muy importantes al mismo tiempo y en este momento, además de todo, tenemos la militarización en las calles de Portland, de Oregon. Es totalmente ridícula la situación y ni siquiera me hagas hablar de eso porque puedo seguir toda la noche.
So, what the Black Lives Matter movement has shown is that change can happen. It's important because people, I think that Black Lives Matter was helped by the pandemic. The people wanted to go out, it was a combination of things between the pandemic, between what's happening with the Trump administration and everybody's frustration and the fact that the death of George Floyd was videotaped, was shot on a for the world to see that. There was no denying what that was. So when you think, you go back to the first question you asked me about, how have things changed? Back then, people didn't have phones to record. Now we have phones.
Cuando hablamos del movimiento de Black Lives Matter, de las vidas negras importan, eso lo que nos demuestra es que el cambio puede suceder y Black Lives Matter fue ayudado en realidad por la pandemia, porque entre la pandemia, Trump y la frustración de ver realmente cómo matan a George Floyd, que eso está en video para que todo el mundo lo vea, no hay forma de negarlo, y las cosas han cambiado. Volviendo a la pregunta que me hiciste al principio con respecto a qué ha cambiado en estos últimos 30 años, lo que cambió es que la gente tiene una cámara en el bolsillo que es su teléfono. Eso cambió.
Yeah, especially in that time, that combination of people being really aware of what was being thrown at them. And then all of a sudden this thing happening in the middle of the pandemic make everybody jump to the streets and they didn't care. That was much stronger than COVID and whatever fear they would put on them, right? So it's just like a very, very big moment.
Mari
En realidad, lo que me parece es que la gente estaba harta y de repente le tiraron esto encima y realmente la frustración de la situación fue más fuerte que el miedo que tuvieron a la pandemia e hizo que la gente salga a la calle directamente. Mati, dijiste algo más y me lo perdí, ¿eh?
No, creo que fue.
Let me just remind you. The first time I went to Argentina, driving through the plaza, where all of the Madres de la Plaza had walked, driving by those buildings where people had been taken, where all the tortures had been happened. It's not that long ago. It really, I felt a chill down me because I remembered the history of Argentina. It's not that long ago that you in Argentina experienced, a dictatorship of that kind, So, the history stays with you, I grew up in America. When the first time I went to Argentina, I couldn't help but be overwhelmed by that feeling.
Recuerdo la primera vez que fui a Argentina, pasamos en el auto por la plaza donde están las madres de Plaza de Mayo, y recuerdo la sensación cuando iba en el auto por esos edificios donde habían realizado torturas, y en realidad eso ya no fue hace tanto tiempo, y me estremecí por dentro al pensar en la historia. Yo nací en Estados Unidos, me crié en Estados Unidos, pero cuando fui a Argentina pensé, me estremeció la idea de la historia y que no hacía tanto que había estado esa dictadura en Argentina. La historia perdura, la historia continúa, uno la lleva.
And how do you think the story will take you guys ahead in the next couple of months?
¿Cómo crees que la historia los tratará en los próximos meses a ustedes?
I think that people are seeing that for themselves, you know, what's happening with the performance of the madman in the White House, you know, which is why he's changing his path now. So they are telling him now to back off. So that's what he's doing. So it will be interesting to see the people who now want to continue to follow him. Because in America, what's confusing is the idea of freedom. People don't want to be told what to do, but they're confusing it. You know, they're confusing the whole idea of wearing a mask with freedom.
Oh, yeah.
La gente en realidad cada vez más está viendo lo que sucede con el loco ese que tenemos en la Casa Blanca. En este momento hay gente que le está diciendo que tiene que cambiar el rumbo y está cambiando. Vamos a ver cuál es la gente que queda siguiéndolo después de eso. En realidad en Estados Unidos hay una idea confusa de la libertad, hay una idea rara de la libertad, donde ahora están con el tema de que si uno usa barbijo o no, ese es un tema de la libertad. Hay una confusión.
You know, I mean, it's kind of like, you know, it goes in waves, and you think, like, how is it in Brazil that they allowed this madman to happen, right? How is it? You know, there's a lot of people now who have a lot of money, and they want to keep that money. So, you know, society now has gone like this. You know, the division between the rich and the poor has gotten a lot bigger because of the direction of the tech world, and there's a lot more money out there that people have earned. Do you know, in the 2 months of COVID, the first 2 months of COVID, billionaires have earned $369 billion more in 2 months.
Viene como en olas, ¿no? Uno se pregunta cómo en Brasil puede ser que hayan permitido que ese loco gobierne. Y la gente con dinero quiere mantener su dinero, y la brecha entre ricos y pobres cada vez es mayor. El mundo tecnológico también permite eso y ha sumado a eso. Por ejemplo, en los 2 primeros meses de COVID, no sé si saben, pero los billonarios en esos 2 meses pudieron ganar 369.000 millones de dólares más, solamente en esos 2 meses.
So, you know, for me, I go back to cinema and the camera, and for me, because I have a political soul, for me it's a way of, you know, making a statement and trying to make the world a better place. So that's me, you know, and so in this time right now of change, you know, I hope that we move to a better place in this world. I hope.
We better learn. We better do it, because it's the only place that we have, right?
It is. And I just want to remind you that scientists were saying we only have 12 years left. They didn't say 15, they didn't say 20, they said 12.
Y yo, en realidad, me quedo con el cine, me quedo con la cámara. Yo tengo un alma política. Yo tengo la posibilidad de hacer una afirmación, una declaración para hacer que el mundo sea mejor. Porque en tiempos cambiantes lo que espero es que cambie y que sea mejor, porque es el único lugar que tenemos. Y piensen y recuerden que los científicos hace poco dijeron que nos quedan 12 años, ni 15 ni 20, 12.
So I have some questions from the people, from the crowd that is listening to us. Somebody's asking, what's your secret for enjoying your work so much?
What's my secret?
What does the motor, the fuel for your passion, I would say?
¿Cuál es el secreto del que te encante tanto tu trabajo y el combustible que tienes para esa pasión?
I think part of it has to do with trying out new ideas. It's a kind of a process of discovery. I'm always trying to learn something by what I do. That's one thing. The other thing that's really big, huge is the people I work with. That's a huge part of why I've really enjoyed working, in the film industry. So much of it is about the collaboration and the people I work with. Like you, Mati.
Una parte de eso es tratar y probar nuevas ideas, el descubrimiento. Siempre me gusta aprender sobre el trabajo que hago y una parte enorme de por qué me encanta es la gente con la que trabajo. Me encanta trabajar en la industria del cine, me encanta porque es un trabajo colaborativo con gente fantástica como vos, Mati.
Yo no le pedí que diga eso, ¿eh? I didn't ask for you to say that.
Yeah.
Okay, somebody's also asking, how was dealing with, hold on, I mixed the question. How was the experience of working with moving set dressing, I would say moving sets and live tricks on Eternal Sunshine?
Yeah. It was, working on that film was always like working on a moving target,
Trabajar en esa película fue como trabajar con un blanco que se está moviendo todo el tiempo.
And the scene where Kate and Jim are running away from being erased, what I call the chase scene, when the UPS almost hits them, when the truck almost comes and hits them.
Mm-hmm.
That night, again, very cold. We were putting together the scene with the different elements with the truck, and suddenly Michelle turns to the AD. You better translate, Mary.
Okay.
A long story.
En la escena donde Kate y Jim están escapándose para que no los borren, en una escena que yo llamo la persecución, y que aparece un camión de UPS que casi los choca, es una escena de noche, hace muchísimo frío, estamos estableciendo todo, armando todo, y el director de repente le dice al asistente.
So Michelle turns to the AD, Michael Hausman, and says, who at this point, Michael Hausman, well, he's a very famous producer. He produced Brokeback Mountain and all of, he produced Amadeus. And, he's a producer. He really liked Michelle and he wanted to AD for Michelle. And at this point, he's 67 years old. And he was almost like Michelle's father on set. So.
He kept him contained.
Michael Hausman, que era el asistente de dirección, en realidad es un productor muy famoso, es el productor de Brokeback Mountain, es el productor de Amadeus, es un productor muy conocido, y en el momento en que filmamos Eterno Resplandor tenía 67 años, así que en realidad, porque le encanta Gondry, pero parecía el padre de Gondry en el set.
So Michelle turns to Michael and he says, Michael, goes, I need the fence. And Michael looks around and he goes, fence? He goes, fence? I don't see a fence. What do you mean the fence? And he goes, Michael, I need the fence. And so Michael goes on the radio and he says, calls to the production designer and he says, Dan, what is this about a fence? Do you know anything about a fence? and you hear, and Dan says, fence. He goes, we're making it. We're here in the shop and we're making it. You can translate.
Yeah. Gondry se acerca al asistente de dirección que se llama Michael y le dice, Michael, necesito que esté el cerco, es lo que necesito es el cerco. Y el asistente le contesta, no veo un cerco, ¿a qué te refieres? No, que es que yo necesito el cerco, le dice el director. Entonces Michael lo llama al diseñador de la producción, al escenógrafo, y le dice, ¿sabes algo de algún cerco? Y el diseñador de la escenografía le dice, lo estamos haciendo en este momento. Lo estamos fabricando.
So Michael turns to Michelle and says, Michelle, well, they're making it. It's not done yet. They're making the fence. And Michelle's like, Michael, I want the fence. So like a kid. And so Michael's like, okay. He goes, Dad, just bring the fence. So then all of a sudden, 10 minutes later, you see this truck arrive and you see the people on the truck painting the fence, hammering it together, and for them to put the fence in. But the fence was really important because the fence is part of the story, ends up being part of the story. So that's the whole thing. It's like, I just sat back and I laughed and I'm like, okay, here we go, because Michel Gondry is like a kid with paper, construction paper, colored paper, where he sits there and at his desk and he's cutting it up and he's like, oh, I need the blue paper. Okay. I need the red paper. Okay. And then he puts it together.
Michael le contestó a Gondry, están fabricando este cerco, no lo tiene, y el otro seguía gritando que lo quería y lo quería, entonces finalmente el asistente dice, bueno, entonces que lo traigan, y aparece un camión con gente arriba que lo estaba pintando y le estaba hasta poniendo los clavos en ese momento para poder ponerlo, pero en realidad el cerco era muy importante porque era parte de la historia. Y Gondry es como un niño, que está con sus papeles, que grita, por favor, quiero el papel azul, quiero el papel rojo, porque finalmente hace un collage y arma algo.
Now I have another very important question. Let's say, what advice would you give to female cinematographers in this new era of cinema and upcoming female DPs? What would be your advice for them?
I would say the first one would be, inevitably you're going to run into people who are judgmental and, who look at you, in a strange way. Even at this time, because things have changed a lot since I started.
Sure.
La pregunta es, ¿qué consejos tendrías para las mujeres directoras de fotografía en esta nueva era del cine? Y la respuesta es, en principio, que vas a ver siempre gente que hace un juicio de valor, gente que te mira un poco raro. Las cosas han cambiado mucho, igual en los 30 años que yo llevo en la industria.
So it's important that you don't take whatever someone says personally. You have to understand that when they say something or they act a certain way, it's more about their insecurities than it is about you.
Es importante no tomarse nada a título personal y entender que cuando alguien hace algo o dice algo, tiene más que ver con su inseguridad propia que con usted.
And I usually make a joke about it, because, it's like you try to make a joke about it. If you take it too seriously, you're only hurting yourself.
Yo normalmente lo que hago es hacer una broma al respecto. Eso es lo que me sirve bastante, porque si lo tomo demasiado seriamente, solamente me daño a mí misma.
And unless it's sexual harassment, at which point you have to take action. If it's something like that, you have to take action and you have to ask them to stop. And if they don't, then you have to take action and go to the producer.
A menos que sea, por supuesto, acoso sexual, en cuyo caso, por supuesto, hay que tomar acción inmediatamente, hay que pedirles que paren, y si no paran, hay que ir a hablar con el productor.
Yeah, so I was actually really shocked when about 4 years ago, there was a lot of women, part of the union, who came to my house. I offered my house as a place to come and meet, so they could talk, and we could have drinks and they could talk freely. And I was shocked how many people talked about sexual harassment that had happened. So we talked about a plan for how to deal with it, and I think that the more that women talk amongst themselves and they act together, the stronger they can be, as a group.
Hace unos 4 años más o menos invité a un montón de mujeres de la industria que vinieran a mi casa para hablar y para tomar algo y para charlar libremente, y me vi completamente choqueada porque muchas contaron historias de acoso sexual y de cosas que con las que habían tenido que lidiar. Y para mí lo importante es que las mujeres estén unidas, que las mujeres hablen entre sí como grupo.
And I would say one really important thing is that I never ever saw myself as a victim, in terms of opportunity. So I never went like, oh, I never had the opportunity because I'm a woman. I never saw myself that way. I always looked at, this is the work I want to do because I'm really interested in this. And I knew that I couldn't know everything in the beginning. So I would try to ask questions whenever I could, but I didn't feel sorry for myself because I was a woman and because I didn't have all the opportunities. I just was interested and determined to do good work.
Yo, la verdad que también me parece que me ayudó bastante que nunca me vi a mí misma como una víctima, nunca pensé, tengo menos oportunidades porque soy mujer. Lo que yo pensé fue, yo quiero hacer esto, y todavía no lo sabía hacer bien, pero estaba muy interesada, y como no lo sabía hacer bien, lo importante era hacer preguntas, que las hice, pero nunca me sentí menos ni me dio como lástima mi condición de mujer por tener menos oportunidades.
I really like your angle. I really love your angle about that. It's really big, Ellen, and I feel moved by that. Thank you. Honestly.
Me encanta lo que dijiste sobre eso, realmente me conmueve eso que dijiste.
And the other important thing to remember is that your crew are really important. They are the people who are your allies, the people who will protect you, the people who will stand by you if you stand by them. And if you lead them, you have to be a leader and you have to take responsibility for your crew. It's really important because they are your people and they don't have as much power as you do. So I always treated my crew like my flock, and I was the head, and anything is going to happen to them, they have to go through me first.
I give faith of that.
Recuerda también que sos parte del equipo y que tu equipo son tus aliados y son quienes te van a proteger y quienes van a estar con vos todo el tiempo. Hay que ser un líder, hay que liderarlos, hay que ser responsable por el equipo. Ellos no tienen el mismo poder que tenés vos como director de fotografía. Para mí, mi equipo es como mi rebaño. Yo estoy ahí para ellos y ellos para mí. Y Mati da fe de eso.
I think I would like to close with that, if that's okay by you. I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate your inspiration to everybody here. And we all love you. And we all really respect you and cherish you for the person you are and the amazing DP that you are as well.
Oh, you want to translate?
Quería agradecerte enormemente por haber estado, porque sos una persona fantástica, porque sos una directora de fotografía increíble, porque todos te queremos acá y estamos muy contentos de que hayas pasado este momento con nosotros.
Thank you, Mati. And it's people like you and Mateo Bourdieu and Sebastian Almeida and everybody I know in the U.S. or Argentinians, and all my friends in Argentina, that make a big difference. That's really what makes a big difference, is that community of people, we work together. And so thank you for inviting me to be part of this.
Es gente como vos, como Sebastián Almeida, que otro argentino que está en los Estados Unidos, y los amigos que yo tengo en Argentina que realmente marcan una diferencia. Es una comunidad de personas y te agradezco muchísimo que me hayas invitado.
Okay, we hope to have you here back soon, or we'll all go there to your house and drink it.
Porfa.
Okay, now I'm going to go to Spanish now, sorry.
Sí.
Bueno, quiero agradecer mucho a Marifé Caicedo por la traducción. La verdad que nos ha ayudado muchísimo a que todo el mundo escuche bien, entienda bien y no nuestras traducciones improvisadas. Quiero agradecer mucho, a la ADF, a todos los que acompañan siempre, a todos los socios protectores, avisar de las masterclass que van a estar sucediendo en el mes de agosto, al cual todos están invitados a participar. Pueden contactarse con la ADF, hay mucha gente que va a dar clases increíbles, y bueno, y estos vivos de ADF siguen, y seguiremos tratando de aprender y escuchar y compartir este momento. So, thank you very much, Ellen, and hope to see you soon. Everybody, I have like so many little hearts for you from people on Instagram and Facebook, and everybody's saying so many I love you, Ellen, that you get the picture.
Gracias, Marifé.
Thank you so much. It was an honor.
Thank you so much, Marifé. Very well done. Thank you.